All right.
All right.
Let's count on Melissa being able to catch up with us.
Okay.
We have a quorum. Hello and welcome. My name is Jane Grover. Right now, chair of the Equity Empowerment Commission. Big welcome to Carla and Kimberly. Thank you so much for applying to the commission and saying yes when asked to be appointed. Congratulations on your appointment, which happened, by the way, just this week on Monday at the City Council meeting. I'd love to go around the room and introduce ourselves all around the room with a reminder to those of you who have been on the commission for a while that let's not use acronyms. Let's make sure that we explain context for our two new members, that we spend some time just explaining things more so that we are all on the same page as soon as possible. Thanks so much. So again, Jane Grover, I chair the commission at the moment. I'm going to go the way you are all stacked in my view, if that's okay. I'll just impose a little order here. Alejandra, you're next in my view.
Thank you. Good evening, all. My name is Alejandra Ibanez. I've been serving on the committee since its inception. Happy to be here. I am a returning Evanstonian, came here in the late 80s, graduated from ETHS, class of 91. And now I'm raising 3 sons in Evanston. I will have 2 middle schoolers this fall, and my eldest is a sophomore at ETHS. Again, welcome to our new commissioner. So great to have you on. And Shanika, you are to my right.
There you go.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hello, Dolores. Hello.
Hello, Melissa. All right, we're doing introductions, Melissa. We have 2 new members of the commission, and we will circle around to Carla and Kimberly in order, but right now it's on Shanika.
Good evening. Can you all hear me?
We can.
Okay, awesome. Good evening, everyone. Welcome, Carla and Kimberly. My name is Shanika Holdenkirk. I won't use acronyms, so I am the International City County Management Association Fellow for the City of Evanston. So I work with the City of Evanston. And I have been on this committee. I'm one of the new ones as well. I started a couple of months back in late 2019. So welcome to have you guys.
Great.
And to my right, Dolores Holmes. It's on you.
Good evening. I'm Dolores Holmes, a retired Evanstonian, community person, volunteer, whatever. I've been with the commission since its inception. Have done several things in the community over the years. A 1957 graduate from ETHS, so my kids are all grown, my grandkids are all grown, so that's it. So I keep myself busy doing volunteer work.
And who's next, Dolores? Who do you see to your rightish? You're muted. You're muted. You're really good with the mute trigger.
I don't know why it's not doing it.
Oh, there we are. We hear you
Okay.
now. All right, so
I
who's
said
next?
you are to my right, so evidently we'll have, since you've already introduced yourself, I guess we'll go to Tim.
Hi all, my name is Tim. I've been on the commission from the beginning, so what, 2.5 years now, and lived in Evanston for 10 years. I teach at Garrett Theological Seminary. Got 3 children, one who just graduated, another one who's going to be a senior, and then a rising 6th grader at King Arts. So, and I've particularly represented Environmental Justice Evanston, a subcommittee of Citizens Greener Evanston on this commission during my time here. And to my right is Max.
Hey, thank you, Tim. Hi, everybody. Good to see you, Carla and Kimberly. Thanks for being here. My name is Max Weinberg. I've been in Evanston for 3 years only, so still a lot to learn. My partner and I have 2 kids, a 14-year-old who's starting at the high school in the fall, and a 9-year-old who's at Washington. We're proud District 65 family, and I'm a proud District 65 employee. I'm a principal at Lincolnwood Elementary. where a lot of Evanston history and issues of race and class converge daily. And it's something that I'm really, really passionate about, and it's what drove me to be on this committee, to get a better understanding of the inner workings of Evanston and be a part of building a better Evanston, especially for Black and Latinx families.
And Max is glad not to be the newest member of the commission now.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Thank you.
Who's next, Max?
Next to me, now I see you again, Jane, but let's see, Kimberly Richardson, and then Carla's next to her.
Kimberly Richardson. Yeah.
Yeah, there's now two Kimberlys. Oh, we're gonna figure out which one's gonna be called Kim. So Kimberly Richardson, as interim assistant city manager, I've been with the city since 2016. I don't know how many years ago that was because it feels like forever. I started here as the assistant too. I've have worked in the role of deputy city manager prior to my current status as interim. I've been working with this committee for now over a few months, and also in other ways supporting the committee behind the scenes. Lastly, I would say I am not an Evanston resident. However, I feel like I should be since I'm here more than I am in my own home. Yeah. However, my roots and my tie to the community, I have a deep appreciation for the history that a lot of the community members have shared and expressed, and the commitment of those who come and voice and be a part of change of government. So I really appreciate working here and working with you all.
Likewise. Carla, I think you were next.
Hi everyone. I am happy and honored to be here to join this committee. I have been an Evanston resident for 7 years. This summer will be 7 years. I have two District 65 kids, one going into 4th grade and the other one going into 2nd grade. And I joined this committee because I not only a resident, I'm a business owner in Evanston. I teach equity and anti-racism classes, and I'm about to become a grad student again at Northwestern, studying equities in education. So this is just another way in which I can participate in my community and make things different for my children.
Wonderful. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. Who's next, Carla? Whom we haven't tapped already. We've got options.
Kathy.
Kathy. Kathy, are you there? You look unblinking on my screen, frozen in time.
Yeah, same here. So maybe Melissa?
Should we go to Melissa? And I'll find Kathy. Oh, now Kathy's nodding.
I was frozen for a second. Sorry, my internet might get a little glitchy. Melissa, you want to go or?
You go, and then I'll follow you.
Okay, sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Kathy Lyons. I guess you can all read that now. And I like, Carla, thanks. I had not thought to put my my pronouns, my preferred pronouns. It's a great idea. I will do that. But my preferred pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I've been in Evanston. I was trying to do the math in my head and I can't. I moved here in '94, so whatever that is. I am a parent, hearing all the 65. My kids are proud graduates now of District 65 and ETHS and are in college. I have 21-year-old twin young men. I have worked in different places. I currently work at Center for Independent Futures, which is an Evanston nonprofit that supports people with disabilities to live a full life here in our community. Prior to that, I worked at the James B. Moran Center for Youth Advocacy, which tries to keep kids in school and out of the juvenile injustice system. And I've been involved a lot with schools and the nonprofit community as part of those roles, but also as a parent, because one of my sons has special needs. And so I was involved with a lot of parent organization activities from the time they were in preschool.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I'm delighted to have 2 new members. So thank you and welcome, Carla and Kimberly. Thank you for joining on.
Kimberly, I think we're to you. Kimberly with a Y.
Hey, can everyone hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay, great. Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Kimberly Walton. I am excited to be here. A little bit about me. I am a recent transplant both to Illinois as well as Evanston. We've lived in Evanston for about 3 years, which is the same amount of time that we've lived in Illinois. We moved here for my husband's job relocation, and we kind of landed in Evanston accidentally, and then we decided that we wanted to stay here. And so over the last couple of years, I've been learning a bit more about the community, particularly the history of Evanston. We purchased a home in the 5th Ward, and so we're 5th Ward residents. And so we've joined a few of those meetings and just really trying to get more connected to the community and understand, how to get involved and how to get more civically engaged. My background is in healthcare consulting, strategy, and administration. I currently work at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois, where I work in product development, and I'm also a member of the health equity team there, where we kind of look at how are our products and services contributing to the goals of advancing and promoting health equity, particularly in the Chicago area, but also in the other states that we serve. And then my previous job experiences have all been in healthcare, primarily working with state governments on their Medicaid programs and how to create and design programs for vulnerable populations. I'm a native of Houston, Texas. And I am the proud mother of a soon-to-be 9-month-old baby.
Oh my!
Nice. So if you see me off camera or a little distracted or on mute, I'm probably nursing or chasing him around as he's learning to crawl and soon to walk. So,
congratulations!
Thank you.
Wonderful. We have a couple guests to the meeting, but we will get to
Jane. I didn't get to introduce myself.
Melissa, sorry. Hello.
Hello. Sorry, I was having a little bit of technical problem getting on. So, but I'm very glad to be here. Carla and Kimberly, welcome. It's going to be very interesting to have you join us. We need and look forward to your experience. I'm Melissa Wynn. I am a member of the City Council. I'm the City Council liaison, member of the Equity and Empowerment Commission. I've been on here since about the inception. I represent the 3rd Ward, which is southeastern Evanston, and I've been on the City Council for 23 years. So long time, but I'm very excited about this commission and what we can do.
Thank you, Melissa. Doreen, we'll get to you during public comment, if that's all right. And Joan, are you here for the League of Women Voters? I'm assuming. I'll assume until you tell me otherwise.
Yes, I'm here with observing for League of Women Voters.
Great, thank you, Joan, welcome. So Carla and Kimberly, as someone said, the commission's been in existence for a little more than 3 years. We have bylaws, which Kimberly Richardson is going to polish up and get to you a copy of. Our vice chair, I don't know if Alejandra said this, but she is our vice chair. Thank you very much. And we are well staffed by Kimberly Richardson and Shanika Holdenkirk. So we get all our good support, and they do all kind of the back office stuff. So they produce the agenda, they put together the packet, they schedule the meetings. Thank you, Kimberly and Shanika. Please call me or any of the commissioners or Kimberly or Shanika if you have any questions about the business of the commission, how we do our business. For the purpose of meetings, we generally follow Robert's Rules of Order. I don't think there's anything in our bylaws that talks about how we conduct meetings, but it's really mostly Robert's Rules of Order. We are, if you read through the bylaws, which I candidly haven't done in a while, we are kind of advisory to the City Council. We have advanced a few things up to the City Council for City Council votes and deliberation. We were instrumental last year in taking on the kind of the first step in the reparations initiative in Evanston, and deliberated over several meetings with a subcommittee and with lots of community input, a couple community meetings, what became then a resolution that went to the City Council supporting reparations. We are now, I think, going to be tackling in the next couple months development of some community indicators that will help us then measure the city's progress to achieving some goals in equity. We're going to get to that later in the meeting a little bit, but we're starting to just jump in with development of some community indicators. And one thing that we have been working on is the environmental justice resolution, which is also on our agenda tonight for consideration. So the agendas get put together by kind of me, Alejandra, Kimberly, the week before. We kind of work on it the Friday before. It has to be posted on the Tuesday before, publicly posted with official meeting notice on the Tuesday before our Thursday meetings. We follow the rules set forth in the Illinois Open Meetings Act, which prescribe that we cannot conduct business, formal business without a quorum, but we also cannot meet in more than 2 people. I think an official subcommittee of this body is 3 people. If 3 people meet, then you have to issue a formal notice to do that, to conduct the business of the commission. So we're very careful about emails. So if you get an email, don't reply all if it's about the business of the commission. You are welcome to reply all if it's something like, what's the link to the meeting tonight? Or what's the password to the meeting? That kind of thing. So, which we obviously had to do tonight. So everything that we do also is subject to the Freedom of Information Act. So everything you have to keep it for a certain amount of time. The city also keeps all of our records as well. And then I'm trying to think, is there another law that kind of governs how we conduct meetings besides the Open Meetings Act, FOIA?
FOIA doesn't, but I would just tell you all, you will be getting a packet in the mail that will guide you through training, along with the boards and commissions rules book that all boards and commissions are followed, that's been adopted by the City Council. So right. Those will be coming in the mail, and then you'll have to do a training. For tonight's purposes, you have been seated, however, you are not able to vote this meeting, only because until you complete the documents that will be sent to you, then that will allow you then to move forward as you will have your oath completed. So I just want to make you aware that we want you to deliberate with us and definitely provide your input. It's just when we do a roll call vote tonight, you will not be able to participate. But moving forward, you will have no problem doing so.
And we will only be voting tonight on the minutes from our last meeting and the environmental justice resolution. So that's pretty simple. The Equity and Empowerment Commission is one of probably, 3 dozen boards, commissions, and committees, volunteers, populated by volunteers from the community. You have to have an Evanston address. You have to live in Evanston to serve on one of those several dozen boards, commissions, and committees. And each one of them has dedicated staff, and each one of them has city governmental support for what they do. And so this is just one of the many. We're glad to have you with this one, I gotta say, Kimberly and Carla. Any questions so far then? Anything that pops up? I'm assuming you've both served on boards or school committees or in your communities before. This one's probably not much different. Just a little more focused on Evanston and the equity framework. The first order of business is to approve our minutes from our meeting on June 18th. Our first Zoom virtual meeting was on June 18th. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? And a second?
I move approval.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
You have to do a roll call. Sorry.
Oh, thank you.
We're required to do a roll call.
Those are the new Open Meetings Act. Illinois Open Meetings Act is that you have to do a roll call. So here's a question, Kimberly. I wonder if you could check on this. At my job, we've been doing both the roll call for members present. At the same time, we've been approving minutes. So we'll say, Jane, I'm here, I approve the minutes. Can we do it?
That's fine.
Something like that at the same time?
Sure.
All right, well, think about that for the next meeting then.
Okay.
Maybe we can do that. All right, so.
Do you want me to call the roll? Or
Yes,
Shanika?
please.
Okay.
Or Shanika, or, yeah.
Jane Grover.
Aye.
Alejandra Ibanez. I can never pronounce it correctly.
Ibanez.
Ibanez. I'm going to get it right eventually. Ibanez. I promise you. Sorry.
Present.
Minutes. Approve the minutes.
Yes.
Okay. Dolores Holmes.
I approve the minutes.
Timothy Everhart.
Approved.
Max Weinberg.
I'm here and I approve.
Kathy Lyons.
I'm here and I approve.
Melissa Nguyen.
I'm here and I approve.
And then I will have, do I call the two or not?
I don't think they have voting privileges yet. So we've got 5 votes out of 9 anyway.
Okay.
To approve the minutes. So that's, that does it. Great.
All right.
Thank you very much. The minutes are approved.
Do you not need to document their presence?
Pardon me?
Do you not need to document their presence to the meeting?
That Kimberly and Carla are here?
Yes.
Done.
Oh, okay.
All right, the next item is public comment. And just a little bit of background for our new members is we put public comment at the beginning of the meeting. Anyone who wants to chime in with public comment has generally 3 minutes, a 3-minute interval to offer their public comment. It's all recorded, obviously, and will be then reflected in the minutes of the meeting as well. It looks as if we have 3 people on the call. Joan is here observing for the League of Women Voters of Evanston. Doreen, did you want to offer public comment tonight? Doreen Price?
Yes, can I be last?
There's only,
I think we may at most have 2 offering public comment. So you're on. Thank you.
Okay. I apologize that I usually have a greater preparation than coming in today. And that kind of speaks to the question of adequate notification with regard to full participation and accessibility of information, which is in your document. And I think fleshing that out with regard to timing such that in the past, the 48 hours is something that has always been a race for people who are involved in all sorts of other activities as well. And that it really puts a lot of pressure in trying to figure out a way to make that work if you're in the middle of a crisis. And right now, there's even more crises going on in lots of people's lives with the challenges that we know about. So I would strongly suggest waiting to the next meeting and getting more input from your new members and also being voting people with newer aspects or newer perspectives and ways of looking at this. This is an entirely beautiful, great document. I fully support it. I think it's going to be very crucial, though, in the application that it's done right the first go around, especially if it's going to end up in planning and development. And that's where enforcement is going to occur. And the enforcement can be non-equitable, as we know. So, or involve social justice issues, or with regard to zoning, with regard to impermeable surfaces and the effects that they might have on a neighbor who happens to be lower income or disadvantaged. So these things have ramifications that if we bring a broader community, and because of COVID and everything else, I think there's been kind of a break in the continuity of the discussions that went into this, which were substantial. And so the document is a reflection of that. In terms of where we move forward, I strongly suggest that we wait until the next meeting to move forward and develop more of an outreach to have others involved in this particular end of the process where they may now see a piece of it that they can identify with. The specifics are good. They're there. They weren't there before in terms of what I remember. So that's a good thing. But again, it comes at a price in terms of my ability to give you more information, more of an input that would help. So I'm being sort of general as opposed to more specific, which I'd rather be. In terms of the equity, or in terms of the structure, you have the collaboration of the empowerment of the environmental board and the Equity and Empowerment Commission. And then you have a third factor called Evanston Justice Group. And that group is either a group or it's a concept. And it's not clear in terms of how it's written. I remember it being written as a concept. But in terms of participation, it looks like the group. So I think that needs to be clarified. And again, I think really and truly with the new members involved, think about whether or not that this is enough time for people to, what the usual traditional time is, which I know it is. If we want to be an equity empowerment environment and give people extra chances, sometimes they need a little extra help or a little extra time. It would be useful to factor that in, which it has not been before. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Doreen, very much. Jared Davis. Jared, are you here? Are you wanting to offer public comment tonight?
Hey.
Hey.
Alderman Grover, thank you. No, I am not. I am here, but I am not wanting to offer public comment. I'm just here observing, but thank you for asking.
All right. Thank you for joining us tonight. Great. So that wraps up our public comment tonight. Next on the agenda is consideration of a resolution to support environmental justice. As a reminder, this is in your packet. Looks like a redlined version of it is in the packet. And Kimberly, if you had a little background to offer about the status of this, and I do know that Tim, you had some more changes and edits to offer tonight. And we'll try to do that live so that we can approve this resolution to send it along to the next step tonight. That would be great.
Yes, so I know the Environment Board met either earlier last week they've met, and I know that speaking to Kumar Jensen, the staff liaison, he was not clear on the process, and so after he and I spoke, we are going to go ahead and move forward with approving the document once amended per the discussion we have this evening. What happens typically in a situation, you all are a committee, so typically what happens is that staff will give our law department a copy of the language, and then they will format it to be put into a resolution or ordinance so that it will then travel to the appropriate committee at the city council, standing committees. This particular one will be going to planning and development. We did have our attorneys review this along the way. So even though what you're seeing today is still a markup, it has been a markup that has been reviewed by our law department. What they requested of us is to allow for us to make any final edits so that they can then prepare the document and then allow for that to go then to the P&D. At this time, because it was not approved at the Environment Board meeting, what we will do is I will submit to Kumar those adjusted language that will then be presented to them on August 12th or 13th. I can't remember which day. I think it's the 13th, Kumar, 12th or 13th. Okay. Anyway, and so that once, if they move forward and approve it with no additional corrections, then we will go ahead and move this on to P&D. And then it will have a resolution number. It's a resolution, not an ordinance. And then it'll be for action as a resolution. And so that's the process. Now, if you want to hold it, I mean, that's that'll be the prerogative of the commission, but there's nothing technically holding us from withholding a vote for tonight.
So P&D refers to the Planning and Development Committee, which is an aldermanic committee, kind of like a subcommittee of the City Council. And this would go to the Planning and Development Committee because of its subject matter. Thank you, Kimberly, very much. So it would go to Planning and Development to, I'm assuming in September then. So the first meeting of Planning and Development in September? Okay.
Correct. So that will be, as long as they have a meeting, it will be September 14th.
Okay.
Jen, I have a question. I don't remember when we did other things that went to, that had to move on either to Human Services or wherever it went, that the final document came from us. And this is going to go back to the Environmental Committee and also to the legal department. So I don't know what that document's going to look like. I'm not really comfortable with that. If I'm understanding what you're saying, it's a process for this, but this is real different than what we've done before.
Sure. So our law department has been shrunk to literally 2 people.
I understand that.
So, I mean, if we want to queue this, then I can't guarantee that, you know, it's going to be ready by September to go to P&D. So in this situation, they're asking for us to provide them with final language. Now, if the Environment Board rejects this update and say we want to make a significant amendments, I think then you can say to me, or you can direct staff, that you approve on condition that no language change. If the language does change to some point of where it's not just grammatical or there's context changes, then we can withhold that submission to the law department.
How about this? How about if we get as far as we can tonight with our edits and amendments? And it seems to me that if the Environment Board is meeting August 12th and 13th, that we're meeting in August right after that. So we would have their newest version. They would have our amendments, then they would take a look at it, and we would then have the final version of it at our August meeting. And then it's that version that would go to P&D. So we would be the last group to touch it. Would that alleviate your concerns, Dolores?
That makes much more sense, but because I thought when we had the joint meeting with them that we ironed out whatever their concerns were at that time.
I thought so too, but apparently I wasn't at the meeting, but apparently they did not vote on it. So they technically they didn't take an actual vote. And so tonight I thought we were just going to approve what was amended, but then then it was a last minute suggestion or request to make some additions to the language. So because of that, it has to go back to the Environment Board, because we will be changing the language that was put together, that they reviewed at the last meeting.
All right.
Okay. Tim, can you shed any more light?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So when we all met for the joint meeting back in February, we had both the Environment Board and we as Environmental Equity and Empowerment raised a variety of suggestions, proposed edits. The first time that any of us have seen this document, whether Environment Board or Equity and Empowerment, was in the agenda for our meeting for tonight. So this seems the proper process for us to see the changes, the edits that the city has made, for us to have a chance to look at it. It's appropriate for the Environment Board to have the same opportunity, and because they're not meeting until August, that's when they will have an opportunity next to see it. And I share your concern from there that this document, after the commission and the board has a look at it, will then go to legal and then P&D, which means that there could be changes. So I'm not sure the best way to handle that, whether some of us just need to make sure we attend those meetings to ensure that no substantive changes take place, or whether we can request that after they have taken a look at them, if it comes back to us. I don't know what the proper procedure is there, but that is a concern of mine as well. But in terms of the Environment Board and us, this is the first time that any of us have had a chance to look at it.
Okay. Well, I'm comfortable with the process that Jane laid out in terms of them meeting, and then we'll have our meeting afterwards in August. I'm comfortable with that, but I'm not comfortable with it us voting tonight, and that's the end of it. I'm just not, for it to move on. That I'm not comfortable with.
Yep.
Well, I was doing it because I know today's
I know, I understand.
meeting.
I understand what you were saying. I just want to make sure that we get that final say on it, because if our name is going to be on it, then I want to make sure that it's on what it is, that it's saying what we want it to say.
So, and then once it goes to the city council at the planning development, and then to city council, it may not, what they approve may not be what we approve anyway.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
oh no, I haven't gotten there. I understand that process completely.
Oh yeah, because as soon as we approve it, that ship has sailed, and the best we can do is to advocate for them to approve the resolution as we've approved it.
And I will do that.
And Melissa's here to
Thanks,
make that
Melissa.
case. Yeah.
But you all know that this city council doesn't always listen, so.
Oh, Melissa, shame on you.
Smile. I said it with a smile.
The other thing that I can say about the Environment Board is, you all know Jerry Garl, who is an active member on the Environment Board, who with me is on Environmental Justice Evanston. She, along with the rest of Environmental Justice Evanston, I forwarded the resolution to EJE after I received it in the agenda. She and others have had a close look at it. And so the edits that I will be recommending tonight are coming from EJE. And so Jerry will not be bringing, I don't expect her to bring any substantive additional changes to the Environment Board. And she is the one who in the Environment Board will look to on this language. So I don't expect Environment Board to make substantive changes from what we recommend tonight.
All right, I appreciate the efficiency with which you and Jerry have conspired on this. All right, so can we talk about your proposed amendments or edits? Yeah.
Can I share the screen so that way if I'm making edits, you can see it, so that way we're not going back and forth anymore.
I'm trying to look at my iPhone while I'm talking to all of you, but that would be helpful.
Kimberly, with that, what I would like to be able to do is cut and paste. So I was planning to cut and paste edits into chat, or
that's fine.
Or you could give me access to the shared document.
How about I give you access to this shared drive so that way it's more efficient?
Okay, let's do that.
Okay, that will work. Now I know you won't be able to see everyone. Are you okay with that, Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Okay, she keeps moving herself. Oh, wrong computer. I have two computers up so I can do this more efficiently. Sorry. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
You can. I'm getting dizzy watching all this.
Sorry. Apologies.
No, you're fast. I had trouble keeping up.
Well, I have two computers going, so that's why I'm trying to do this as efficiently as possible. I'm trying to honor your time.
All right, this is a little complicated on my end.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hey, is there an opportunity to ask a question while you're getting the shared document up?
Yes,
I was just wondering if you could give us any, I would appreciate a little bit of context on like kind of were we asked to do this, is just a little bit of like, I guess, how we got to this point of, preparing this resolution and submitting it.
Thank you, Kimberly. Tim, do you want to offer?
Sure.
Provide a little background?
Yeah. The early impetus for this resolution arose out of a community group from the 5th Ward. Alderman Holmes would have been part of many of those early conversations that began with the waste transfer station on Church Street, close to the high school, located on the boundary between the 5th and the 2nd Wards. And a recognition that waste transfer station is representative of environmental injustice realities that we see throughout Evanston and around the country, of the intersection of race and poverty being the chief indicators of where you will find environmental degradation within our country. And so within the city of Evanston, the waste transfer station, and there have been other dynamics that have been raised since then, recognizing a need for we as a city to address these issues proactively and retroactively in addressing the injustices. So there was a community group that had agitated around the waste transfer station that evolved into an initiative from the sustainability director with the city at the time, who called together an environmental justice subcommittee of the Environment Board, which met for several years, which then morphed into a subgroup of Citizens Greener Evanston, which is the Environmental Justice Evanston group that I've talked about. And so the initial mandate for this resolution came from the city's sustainability director for 4 or 5 years ago. And we have been working hard to get this resolution through really since then. And so what you're seeing is the culmination of several years of work.
Thank you so much, Tim. I appreciate it.
May I add something to that, Jane or Kimberly?
Yes, please.
Kimberly, you said you are a Fifth Ward resident, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just so you would know, the waste transfer station has not always been a waste transfer station. And it used to be just a business that where they just haul garbage, and the site at Darrell and Church was one of many garbage dumps, so to speak, in Evanston, like James Park, and also where Robert Crown, the old Robert Crown, is located. All of that was cleaned up because they're in different communities, but that one was left in the African-American community. So that's where some of the biggest part of the injustice comes. And when I think it was in 1983, I believe it was, that company was sold, and they began to transfer it into a transfer station. And by the time I became alderman, we found out about it and started to work on it. And the work just took off really with a really great grassroots community group that had just kept going, and they continue to meet after all these years. Several of them are still original members, like Janet Alexander Davis and Tanya Noble, people like that who've been on that committee from the very beginning. So it really is one of the, I think one of the great things that has happened out of the Fifth Ward in terms of the community trying to make some change within the community for itself.
Thank you both for that back information. I live right on the park, right on the garbage station, so very important to me.
Where do you live? You live over by there?
Yep, I live on Florence. There's nothing between me and the garbage station besides the park. So
absolutely, absolutely.
No,
I guess resolution also apply to other types of structures that just generally perpetuate the issue of environmental injustice. Like, I'm just thinking about the other place that's further down on Church, is there like an air quality or something? Like, would those types of things be included in this, or?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I framed it as that was the impetus, but the resolution, which aspires to move toward implementation of significant changes within zoning codes, et cetera, that will be addressing citywide issues, not just the waste transfer station.
Are you referring to the water transfer station at Church and right before you get to McCormick?
Yeah, my house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I live right across the street from that. That's a whole different issue, because that was not an environmental issue. It was an environmental issue when Shore School was torn down because there was so much asbestos and stuff there. But that community group, or I guess you'd say effort, had to deal with where people wanted it located in the community or not. So that was a different issue, in my opinion, than the issue of the environment effect on the community of Church and Darrow and Ashland and Florence and Emerson, where the transfer station affects.
Just a question about tone. Just so as I look through not just what's on the screen, but just scrolling through the whole document, I feel like we are explicitly talking about race and about the effect that certain decisions have had specifically on the Black community in Evanston. But when I do just like a find, the word Black, it's not named explicitly. And some of it, I guess I'm noticing that some of it has sometimes like an all lives matter feel to it. And I'm just wondering if there's a space in this to be more explicit about really, I mean, it's interesting to have this right on top of the history of redlining and the evolution of Black Evanston in the board packet. Are there opportunities in here to be more explicit instead of saying vulnerable populations, which can be a loaded term? Is there a place to say what the impact has been on Black families in Evanston, just to be more explicit?
So I'd be happy to weigh in here. Max, this is something that you may recall I raised at our February meeting. The initial language that EJE had brought to the city was much stronger on these points. That had the language had changed with the draft that we saw in February. That was part of the feedback that we had offered back and that we still haven't necessarily seen. So it may be helpful for me to go ahead and start with some of the proposed edits that EJE would like to see based on some of our early work and our comments in February. And then from there for us to collectively engage. Would that be helpful? And this is one of the items that we wanted to address.
Mm-hmm. If I could ask Tim, are there a lot of edits? I'm just wondering about the process here. Could we go through each one?
That's what I.
And then kind of approve each one, or would you like us to just have a conversation and we can move from one to the next unless there's any objection, kind of thing? So I think that may be the best way to handle it here. Unless there's any objection, we'll move to the next one. We'll move to the next one. We'll move to the next one, and then we can approve it as a whole.
And several of them are minor grammatical edits.
Yeah, I had some typos and some punctuation comments too. Okay.
So how about I start with the typos so we can move through those quickly, and then I can go to some of the more substantive.
All right, thank you.
Comments. So.
And everyone else chime in if you've done some editing too that can improve this.
So under section 1, below the whereases, that sentence should read, this resolution establishes the City of Evanston's policy for environmental justice and puts in motion the development of ordinances to ensure, okay? Mm-hmm. Do we need approval for that, or is
no, that if there's no objection, then make that change.
Okay. Great.
Yep.
And I'm not logged into, I'm just reading my edits, so I'm assuming someone else can make those changes.
Kimberly, are you there? Oh, I see Kimberly's in the document. Thank you.
Okay, you should be able to edit, but you're not?
I can, but it's a bit confusing for me to go back and forth between all.
Okay, I can do it. I can go ahead and do it. So
thank you, Kimberly.
You said here?
And yep, and puts in motion. Great.
Great.
Okay, then moving down, section 3. I guess yeah. So section 3, there appears to be a verb missing in the second line.
Yep.
So it may be committed to, the City of Evanston is committed to meaningful and inclusive public engagement.
That's what
right?
That's what I assumed also.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, in section 5, in the first line, the word policy, I'm assuming should not be in parentheses. In line 6, there seems to be a hanging quotation mark after compliant public comment.
Mm-hmm.
And then in, this is a bit more substantive. In section 5, the language of public engagement policy, public participation, and public engagement are used interchangeably. Some were wondering if it would be helpful just to use one or the other to be consistent with it. This is not a major item. It was more of just a proposal. So Kimberly, I'll follow your lead on whether, or Jane, whether you like both and.
I would stick to just one. So public
Okay.
engagement, just for clarity. Yeah.
So I just want to be clear. Public participation is a term that I'm beginning to see more because it's about bringing people into the process, whereas engagement sometimes can be more passive. And so it's up to you. I mean, so it's a more active word when you say participation versus engagement. So I mean, I'm seeing that language being moved to participation because of that more active inclusion of individuals part in the process versus engagement, which can be sometimes more passive. But I'm being very nuanced, so I don't really have.
I would be happy with public participation. The spirit of EJE's hopes here is very much an active participation. So, Jane, what do you think?
From my perspective, it was who's the actor here, and the actor here is the city. So it's the city engaging. So it's a public engagement policy because it's putting it on the city to do the actions of engaging, meaningful and inclusive public engagement. The participating is from the other side of it. But if this is really a prescriptive for the city as the actor, then engagement would seem to me to be the better word.
I agree with that.
Is there a place here for the term outreach?
So outreach is even is just the first step towards engagement. Outreach is considered to be, would be identifying audiences, getting to where they are. Engagement is the process of actually involving them. So public involvement, public engagement would be the interchangeable terms. Outreach is a component of public engagement.
Yeah.
So thank you, Kimberly.
Okay. So public engagement to be consistent throughout. So let me then shift to a more substantive proposal, and this gets at Max's question. And this language itself may not be quite right, but this is drawing on some initial language that had been taken out. Let's see, so you'll see up in the whereases, I'm gonna add, a new whereas, if I can.
I've never had anyone not be able to edit. Let me make sure, like if you have.
There's some.
Try it now and see what happens.
I was able to add it.
You did, yeah.
Okay. Let's see. All right, so I just added another whereas. This language isn't perfect, perhaps, but it names a bit more explicitly what for EJE is important, which is to name some of the historical dynamics and realities and to give it a bit more concreteness, particularity to it. So this would be the first substantive proposal, that this be added back in from what had been taken out.
My only suggestion would be to capitalize the word city.
I thought you were going to say capitalize the word black.
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 Okay.
Yeah, black and brown.
Yes.
I think, yeah, I mean, I'm going to keep pushing that. Like, I think there's a richness too that could go in here. Like, I think we're talking about black and brown families. I think we're talking about black and brown, like, legacy generations. There's the generational piece in Evanston. I think there's a richness. I think to talk about black people in Evanston, there's a richness that often is erased with some of the people who can afford to move, some white people who can afford to move in and make these sort of decisions that affect the community. So it's black and brown communities are disproportionately affected. I'm gonna always bring back kids, like stunted, lower access for children to have the same sort of experiences too outside in nature that white children in the same town are able to have. I don't know if that paragraph is a place for it, but that's just the sentiment behind where I'm going.
Yeah. Can I ask a question? I'm sorry, I'll wait.
Go ahead, Kimberly.
Can I ask for a wording change? And I don't know if this makes sense to say generations of Black, Latinx, and other communities of color, because there's other communities of color too that are not being identified.
And I was going to say, I was just going to simply say that if you go back to generations of history, it really was just Black. Understand that in the Fifth Ward when we're talking about that. The brown community is new to the Fifth Ward, as is the other people of color new to the Fifth Ward. And when I say new, I'm talking about I'm not talking when you go back and look at the history that Dino's talking about. It really was just basically an all Black community. So Max, you're absolutely right on that piece. But I think Kim, you're right in terms of saying Black and other people of color.
Would there, and I don't know the history, so I'm gonna just shout this out, but would there also be a recognition of the Native American community? Because like I said, I'm not a historian, but I'm guessing that this land originally was a Native American community.
Could be, but they weren't in the Fifth Ward in the generations that we're talking about with the segregation and everything, that when it was formed as a living community. If you go back and look at the history, when they were moving. Yeah. So,
there's no point at which this started. So if we're going to name the communities that have been impacted, I don't see how we can name Black communities without naming Indigenous communities. Because it was livable to them, like in the framework of in the way they lived. And we don't want to negate that as a viable living community. Mm-hmm. So I think, saying Black and brown, I think is fine, but I do agree with Max's point about for this conversation to exist at all under equity, because at first when I saw environmental, I was like, oh, where is this going? But the fact that it's being included in a conversation about equity, we can't whitewash it and not talk about Black and brown communities.
And as a point of clarification, this is a resolution for the city of Evanston. I mean, I understand that where this came from was experiences specifically in the Fifth Ward, but this is a resolution for the entire city, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yes, but where environmentalism becomes environmental justice is rooted in the disproportionate effect environmental choices has had on communities of color. So I'm not necessarily speaking about this one, that garbage disposal place that happens to be close to my house. In general, we can't not inundate this document with the effect that it's had on Black and brown people. Because that's what makes it equity and justice oriented, as opposed to just environmentalism.
And whereas clauses are generally part of the statement of their kind of why, you know, they're the why clauses. So they're reciting the reasons for the action taken by the city. So that's where you, for instance, so that's why paragraphs that describe, you know, what the city is hoping to do, what the city has done in the past, and what the city is what the looking forward to. But that's what whereas clauses do. They walk through the history and they explain what the future should be, and then the resolution portion of it is the action taken.
Got it. That's really helpful.
So should we put in the language that we used when we did the commitment to end structural racism and achieving racial equity? We made a whereas clause that named the Native American tribes that were in Evanston, and maybe that language should just be its own whereas, just to acknowledge it.
Yeah, I was thinking that, Kimberly, that there should be that actually towards the Native American issue, I would create a separate whereas clause for that.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this body is prepared to draft that language ourselves tonight, or whether that should be
I
something.
just put it in there.
Okay.
So this is the original language that was in the language that was in the resolution 58 R19. I think that language, if we're going to start doing it, I think we should be very consistent in having that language in everything that we're putting in.
Great.
So that way we can keep having that documented, because before we can talk about other harms, we have talked about the original harm of this land.
This is kind of like adding a land acknowledgement to this resolution.
Right.
Yeah.
Which the city has not done, by the way.
Another thing, I would say, sorry to interrupt, Jane, but I would reorder these and put the history whereas is first,
Right.
and then place the whereases that are looking forward in a later order of some sort.
It's so hard to write by committee.
I know.
Yes, it is.
I know, but it's so
Doing okay. We're doing okay.
So do you like the language that I have? Because I know you said you wanted to approve it before we move on.
Yeah.
I know we added a mention of regarding the individual Maria Murray, who was a slave purchased, a former slave purchased by the band. I know that's in there, but I think that needs to be in the language. I don't know, maybe not.
Could we have a whereas clause that simply refers to the previous resolution, whereas on this date the city council approved?
Yeah, that would be a
this
very
resolution, and it's hereby incorporated in this, or something
sure, but
like
do
that?
people even know that this even exists? I mean, do people know that language even exists? I mean, it's fine, but I just feel like we need to, I don't know. I feel like in order to get people to see it, they have to be reminded of it and not reference it. I don't know. But
Kimberly,
that's up to you.
will you just scroll up a little bit?
yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry.
We all
Well,
live
and this-
in control.
And then,
This is,
yeah.
can I just say a small thing? This has already been approved by legal, right?
This
The-
language has, yes.
So I'm just saying that, like, from a very practical standpoint, like, we know that's been approved. So I'm just thinking that's an advantage to using language that's already been passed legal.
Already gone through.
just a small thing, and I don't, it's been approved, so I say this aware of what was just said, but the land we currently know as Evanston originally belonged to, I think ownership is even, that notion of ownership is a white construct, so I think was inhabited by.
Was stewarded by.
Yeah.
Inhabited seems the more appropriate term.
Right. I agree.
We'll slip that one by legal.
Yeah. They may not even notice it.
I doubt they will.
I know, Jane.
Uh-huh.
Bad chance.
So that whereas clause needs a semicolon at the end and no and, if we're leading with that.
We don't do and. And is the last.
Thank you. All right.
That you were editing a little further below where I think there was a suggestion for the Black, Brown, and Latinx.
Let's go back to that.
So are we good with the other whereas before we get to that one? I just want to make sure the second line, whereas the city recognizes, is this going to now be the second? Is that okay?
I would put, Jane?
Yes.
I would, Kimberly, I would put, I'm going to call it Tim's new whereas. I would put it at second. I'm open to hearing what people say, but that's sort of the recitation of the history.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's important to have at the top where the history is all being gathered. I'm trying to see if there's any other whereas clause that you would view as sort of recognizing the aspect of it, recognizing the historical parts of it.
This is looking good.
Yeah, this is looking much better. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So to Kimberly's point, because she was now referencing number 2, now you're referencing technically section or second whereas.
The second whereas.
Whereas, yeah, right.
Okay.
All right.
The question that I had, I think someone brought it up earlier. I do think it's important to call out the specific races or communities of color, but I guess I'm struggling a bit with the point that Dolores made, whereas generations, she sort of was describing that if we look back at the history of Evanston generationally, we're probably looking at the Black community more so than other communities. So I don't mean to like split hairs, but I'm just wondering, is there a way to like make this into 2 sentences? I don't want to suggest that we remove the other identifiers, but I think that the point of the generational impact on Black families should maybe stand alone.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't that helped by making the other piece separate? A separate whereas?
Not a separate whereas.
No, not a separate whereas, just maybe like taking the sentence and, I mean, I could suggest an edit, but I need to think about it. But maybe turning it into 2 sentences or just, I don't think it needs to be a separate whereas. I do feel that it belongs in the right spot here. I just am wondering if there's a way to sort of be inclusive, but also be deliberate about or intentional about the generational impact on Black families, to the point that Dolores was making earlier. Primarily this issue being something that has been faced by the Black community, and it's more recently that the community has included other people of color.
Kimberly, what do you think of, I think it looks like Tim's had edits there.
Kimberly and I are both kind of editing at the same time. We're both riffing off of what we're hearing, so.
Right. I mean,
tell us what you think.
I think that might cover it. I'm new here, so.
Don't disvalidate your comments. You're making very valid comments. This is why we're asking for your input.
It seems like an elegant solution to me, what you guys have just created.
Yeah, right. I think that should cover it. Thank you.
So Jane, I don't want me to usurp, but I'm gathering that this commission is comfortable, ready to move on to another edit. Is that I think what we're hearing?
Can we do like a thumbs up?
Can we take out the word "of" between Black and Evanstonians?
Oh, yeah. Thanks. This is what happened when you're co-writing together.
There we go. Thank you. All right, so moving on.
Okay.
Tim, it's back in your court.
Great, thanks. Okay, so there was language in section 2 in the definition of public participation or engagement that got taken out, that we're wondering if it could be put back in, that begins with, in taking an action or make a decision that gives full consideration to public input, and then the city would publicize, et cetera, et cetera. We're wondering, it may have been taken out because it was seen as redundant to what's in section 5. The proposal would be, and I'll cut and paste here, that this be added somewhere in section 5. So scrolling down to
Section 5 or section 2, Tim?
It's currently deleted out from section 2.
Section 5 refers to a formal public engagement policy.
Right. So either to keep it in the definition on section 2, or if it seems a bit, or to put it in section 5. I think we'd be amenable to either, but the particularity of the language seems important not to lose.
Section 2 is definitions. Does it make sense in definitions? I think it makes more sense in the policy prescription.
Right. That's the actual proposal, is that it be moved down to section 5.
Okay.
So I'm taking out, what am I taking this here?
Don't do anything to what was in section 2. I think it had been deleted out there.
I did delete it, and then I undeleted it just so we can I can see what you're asking. So do you want to keep this deleted?
Yes, keep it deleted there. And then I've added that language down under section 5.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
So moving to section 5.
Yeah, moving to section 5. I'm quickly looking to see where it would make sense to include in this existing language. Perhaps after public comment.
Yeah, it fits much better here.
Right, is that what you mean right there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that in taking an action is necessary. Do you all agree?
I don't think it is.
Yeah. So that's the proposal. I think we've got that's one place to put it. So
Thank you very much.
are there objections to that, or any additional revisions to that language?
I'm concerned, Tim, about the final sentence in that that first part, the one that says, in response, the city would give due consideration to all public comment provided by involved individuals, and then summarize and respond to major public comments and make its best effort to incorporate their ideas, concerns, criticisms into the final decision making. Right. Generally, the city does not summarize and respond to major public comments in a written form. Certainly during deliberations of the city council, that occurs. But that would be, if that were in writing or stumbling. If that's seen to be something that the city is supposed to provide as some kind of report, I think that that would be problematic. I mean, certainly that happens in debates.
Yeah.
And that's part of the deliberative process that happens throughout the city, planning process as well as at the council.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. And
you have to do that for every committee. I mean, you have to do that for every public comment. Yeah. That's an impossible task.
What if that clause were taken out?
I think that if you remove that clause, then then that is, yes, that is what we do, and make its best effort to incorporate the ideas, concerns, criticisms into the final decision making.
I mean, particularly in the age of staff cutbacks at the city, that's unrealistic.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, what does happen at the very least is that public comment gets recorded. Right. It's made a matter of the public record, and that's the best you can do for that kind of accountability, is that the record is made.
Right.
Yeah.
As a point of clarification, now the city does not have a community engagement policy, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, part of, and maybe I just need to better understand it, because the resolution is aspirational. I mean, or does this turn into some kind of protocol? Because I wonder if it is aspirational, is that what we aspire to do?
So it's a resolution, not an ordinance. So there's a difference between those two. So a lot of this is guidance. So the development of a public engagement policy will take in consideration what this resolution is requesting. In that it's not, a resolution is not the same as an ordinance, where ordinances then become technically the law of the city.
Right.
So in my dream world here, the city council passes this resolution and says, all right, staff, would you begin developing a public engagement policy? We've just resolved to do it. Next step is back to staff, right? Convene a committee or send it back to the Equity Empowerment Commission to recommend a public engagement policy for us. We'd stand ready to do that, I assume. And
well, we've already drafted something.
Right. We've already got something in the works.
Right.
So that would
we're
be
ahead of the game.
The next
you're
step.
just ahead of the game. That's all.
And also, Kumar Jensen came to us. I think it was to us. Maybe I have it mixed
up. Mapping. Yeah.
Oh, he did.
A different committee. Yes, he came to us and described a community engagement policy that he's developing. That I think, my understanding is going to be. I'm hoping that it's going to be standardized throughout the city as something that we use as a template, so that.
Well, there's no document. That doesn't that was for a project. There's nothing.
No, I'm on my equity empowerment.
That was for a project, so okay. I can defer. But I will. But we're all using this, like you all. I'll say this: Equity Empowerment Commission, Environment Board with Kumar. We're all using the same guiding principles of what community engagement should be. It's a matter of how do we then make sure we're embedding equity into that engagement process, so that once it's rolled out and we're training our staff how to do the actual engagement of community engagement, there's some consistency. So Kumar and I are constantly in contact with each other about this. So that's the good thing. And I hope once we have something that's fleshed out, we can then, share it with the Environment Board, who are also doing a lot of community engagement activities to get their input as courtesy.
So when this resolution is presented to the City Council, to the Planning and Development Committee, we could, as part of our remarks to support it and to urge its passage, mention we are developing a public engagement policy. We've got an outline for it already. We'd be happy to work on this.
Yes.
Yes, and I know that we are also working on this environmental justice mapping. Kumar and I discussed that yesterday. So the good thing, a number of these things that are being discussed are things that it's not aspirational. It's in the hopper of it being implemented. Right. So.
A quick time out because there's a baby in the picture. Sorry for the distraction. Kimberly, would you introduce us, please?
Oh, I didn't think you guys were going to catch that.
Of course. How can we not?
Sorry.
Sorry for the diversion here. This is
my son, Matthew. Say hi.
Hi, Matthew.
Matthew.
Hi.
He's 9 months old in just a couple days.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
wonderful. Thank you for that happy diversion.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right.
He
Matthew
works
can
really
come
well.
to any meeting.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Matthew and Kimberly. Back to Tim. Tim, you've made some more edits. Thank you, Kimberly Richardson, for that quick screen switch.
Just call me KR. Just
calling you Wonder Woman.
Oh, you're so sweet. They call me Richardson at my gym because there's so many Kims and we go by last names. Anyway,
well,
go
thank
ahead,
you.
Tim.
You have a long title. All right, Tim, back to you.
Yeah, just one final edit then under section 6, adding the and addressing existing conditions, and then just clarifying how this tool we hope will be used. So those are all of the edits.
All right. Any thoughts, comments, objections, approvals? All right. We've made a bunch of edits to this document, the resolution, both
so
small.
Jake, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
Kimberly, what do you need?
I'm going to move this up if it's okay with everyone.
Yeah.
So I want to honor Max's comments in the chat that he referred to the first section. So I just want to make sure that I honor what he's asking us to consider. And it's regarding the first paragraph in the acknowledgement of Maria Murray. And so what you're asking, Max, if you want to expound, I'll let you speak for yourself.
I'm just trying to humanize Maria Murray. So the sentence at the end says Maria Murray was a former slave purchased by the Vane family. So Alderman Holmes and I were going back and forth, and I'm trying to read up on Maria Murray online, but Maria Murray, it seems, was a 15-year-old girl or woman who was enslaved, and the Vane family, yes, paid to have her come work as a domestic. So I feel like that's a pretty rich story that also speaks to power, race, class. So if there's a way to humanize Maria Murray a little bit in there, I think we want to talk about her as a, you know, nowadays I think of a 15-year-old as a child, but maybe for her sake, she was working, was a woman or a child, a 15-year-old, who, you know, served. I'm not sure exactly how to say it. Who was enslaved, who was, you know, formerly enslaved.
Enslaved is, yeah, is more accurate.
I am concerned. Thanks Kimberly for bringing it up. We were chatting about it. When we go down further, I'm missing the words Black. And I just have this story in my mind that I just want to share because I think about this committee every time I walk by the new Robert Crown Center. And I know the Robert Crown Center has gotten a lot of airtime on Facebook and at city commission meetings, and I'm not totally up on that. But whenever I walk by, we do a lot of family walks since COVID, and whenever we walk by, there's a Bully and Andrews sign, the construction company, right outside of the new Robert Crown Center. And it's a mock-up, and it has the images of a lot of people who look like they're enjoying the new Robert Crown Center. None of the people in the renderings are clearly identifiably African American. They're all really, really white. And I feel like this is about all of the decisions that are made on top of Black and brown communities. I mean, even that part of Evanston is more brown than further towards the lake. And that's where I'm like, are there more opportunities in here just to be very explicit with bringing, and the reason why I said outreach before, making intentional outreach to Black communities to build trust, to have their voice at the table, to deeply understand what the ramifications are going to be from the Black community's perspective, so that we're not white folks aren't making decisions about, but so that we're actually listening and that they're at the table making the decisions. It is about this moment in time. It is about the uprising, and it's about putting this in writing and saying, this is gonna be something that guides decisions we make. And it says right here, Black folks, Black people, Black people, Black people. We cannot keep making decisions without their voices here. And so that's why I keep reading this. And I'm saying that I might be voting no, and that's fine, that's how this goes, because it just doesn't feel like it's strong enough at this very moment in time.
Max, if you've got, I mean, I'm confident that EJE would be amenable to particularizing this language in that direction. So
can you just slow down again?
You've got very specific that would be the most helpful, is if you've got specific places where you could give explicit language to add in.
Can we finish the description of Maria Murray first? We've left that hanging. Was she purchased out of enslavement by the Vane family?
That's my understanding, but we can get much more clarification from that from Dino's work, and I can't remember if it was in this piece or not. I know he mentions her in here. I just didn't. I don't know how to pull it up while I'm looking at it. I was trying to look on my phone, but I can't.
I mean, if you want, like, is there a way to be historically accurate? First woman of African descent, Maria Murray, a 15-year-old Maria Murray, forced to come to Evanston as a domestic in 1855. And you're right, I don't know the story, but when I read purchased, even the purchased word even rings, inhumane.
But that's the reality. But that's the reality. That's the history, and that I did my going off on you guys at the last meeting, so I don't want to do that this time about Blackness. But that's the fact. And Max, you're making my heart smile by your being awoke to these issues of being sensitive to these issues, and I really appreciate that. But that's the fact. She was brought here to work, and it was just enslavement again, but it was probably pennies for what she was getting paid. Who knows?
Right.
But I know Dino has lots of history on that.
Right.
And maybe that's something we can circle back to more in depth.
I mean, I guess yes, I understand. I see it. The Vane family purchased, and she was forced, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, probably.
And then just the opportunity. Yeah. In the part that I can see on the screen, I think the opportunities, Tim, are like, the City of Evanston seeks to support the delivery of an equitable share of environmental benefits and community assets in all neighborhoods. I mean, that can say prioritizing historically Black, or, in all of those opportunities, historically Black neighborhoods, or open spaces, trees, natural areas, community gardens, the lakefront. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. There's some things in here that, we've talked before about the lakefront being restrictive. So historically restricted places like the lakefront.
I guess I'd also just like to echo that I appreciate everything that Max is saying, and it may not be easy to kind of filter that in here, but I also want us to keep in mind, how do we communicate the intentionality of those things? in this document to the city council, because we could pepper it out all the right words, but if they're just words and that's not like really the intention, and the intention is not there by the council later on, you know, it's an exercise in futility, right? And it's a lie. So as much as I agree that that needs to be intention, it needs to be the intention, not just the words in this document. So just kind of giving life to that.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll say as both a member of this commission and a member of the city council, the critical aspect of this is that the council passes this and then directs staff to implement the necessary changes in our ordinance to make this a reality in the process of the city. I mean, you're absolutely right. This only states an intention. It doesn't then cause the intention to be converted into action unless the city council directs that.
And I would further say that the city council can direct it, but until the internal work is actually done within the staff, and you know, Kimberly set out a whole, you know, I'm feeling like we're leading very much into our next segment, which is how do we actually affect the changing of the mindset of the folks that are actually implementing and carrying out all the policies.
I would even say accountability, right?
Yeah, not to move us off this, but I'm just thinking it's really it's putting it all into action, and that requires all the folks that are working at the city to understand both the history, but also their role, all of our roles in making the change today.
And I'd push that even a bit further and say that systemically we need to be looking at what are the ways people are allowed to be part of, whether that's employment or the elected positions, and how those are structurally set up that make it possibly to be truly diverse in who ends up in those positions. Just to the point of all the people who get paid $15,000 in insurance, who's going to end up being able to take on those positions when people need full-time salaries. So I'd look at even structurally, what are the systems we have set up to make that always twisted in one direction?
Yep, absolutely. That's a whole nother conversation. Woo! Carla.
Indeed, just like to give you like it.
Is how we broaden the pipeline of people who can run for office and make the sacrifice to do it. Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering about how to close this engagement while honoring Max's concerns. One proposal, Max, would be that you spend some more time with this document between now and the Environment Board meeting, and that you find a way to communicate. If you communicate those recommended changes to me, or you could send them directly to Jerry Garl or someone else with the Environment Board, that those be then considered for that meeting. I'm happy for us to continue finding each of those phrases, clauses to put them in tonight, or we may be at the point where we're kind of done with this and we want to move on, but that would allow you a chance to add some specificity. Kimberly.
Logistically, you can just share it with me or share me a copy and I can.
So here's what I would recommend, because this was happened. Tim, I appreciate EJ, the committee going through that process, but to make sure that this actually gets done and it's effective, what maybe needs to happen is Tim, Max, myself, or well, it'll be myself because Kumar's going on town. And Shanika, we need to probably schedule a time to meet. Let's clean this up so that way the language that's been incorporated is what the Environment Board are going to review. So they don't have to go through the same process. Because if they come in with recommendations, Kumar will not be at that meeting. So I want to make sure he has an opportunity to look at this as well. So maybe we just need to just circle up and just find a time that we can all meet and just hammer through this. And then, you know, let's give it to them.
So for the commission as a whole, is there consensus that we want to go in the direction that Max is suggesting by enriching this with more explicit mention of Black Evanstonians, the Black community in Evanston? Are we all on board with this? Then I think our next step, thank you, Alejandra, for using your, whatever that is called.
Reactions.
The reaction, and thank you, your reaction in Zoom. Then with that direction, I think that this is in good shape. The next step will be, as Kimberly Richardson suggested, which is to convene the smaller group to add this kind of language. And then it will go with this language to the Environment Board, to their meeting on August 12th or 13th, comes back to us on August 20th at our meeting, and then it advances to the City Council Committee in
September.
All right. Is everybody comfortable with that? Do we have consensus here? Okay.
So
right,
one
great.
question, just for clarification. I've been going back and forth because I say that we say the 5th ward, but I do recognize that there's generations of Black Evanstonians that did not just live in the 5th ward, but also other wards that were not north or on the other side of the tracks. Do you want to be explicit in saying 5th ward, or do you just want to say Black Evanstonians?
Well, if you read Dino's paper, he makes clear that Black Evanstonians once lived everywhere in Evanston, and it was only through the housing segregation, discriminatory housing laws that they found themselves
Correct.
living mostly in one neighborhood, which was the 5th ward. Yeah.
Because they were all pushed to the 5th ward.
They were
Right.
pushed,
Simple
right.
as that. Yeah.
Right. So
Right.
the question is,
So
do we want to acknowledge that separately as a whereas? Maybe the 5th ward has its own whereas, because maybe it needs its own historical context in this.
Well, when you all are working together, why don't you maybe come up with some language that can denote the 5th ward as a, you know, and the other community,
Okay.
we'll call it in
Yeah.
other parts of the community.
okay,
All right. I just want to ask that clarification since that's deviating.
it's a good
Thank
question.
you.
Thank you.
All right.
All
I'm going
right.
to stop sharing.
So Tim, thank you for all of your edits and your contributions to this. Max, thanks so much for adding your perspective as well. Looking forward to the next version of this. And can we just promise each other that we'll get this done at our next meeting, August 20th, is that it gets the equity empowerment stamp of approval or not, but of course you're welcome to vote how you want on it, but I'd really love to see this move off our agenda to somebody else's.
Will you just review the logistics? So Tim will share like Google Docs and we can all weigh in? Is that the process?
I don't think we're all weighing in. I think it's you and
Just the
Tim
four of us.
and Kimberly.
We're going to have a little committee of the 2 of you and staff so we can get the language cleared.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
And in this way, I could have the legal department review it, because we're making some changes here that now I think they need to have another look at it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Great. Thank you in advance. Looking forward to seeing the next version of it. Moving on our agenda then, discussion of a community engagement survey to staff. So we started thinking about it as we were working on a community public engagement policy that we were going to be drafting, which would be essentially like a policy guiding all city staff in their public engagement activities, that we really didn't have a good idea of what exactly city staff are involved in public engagement. So what is as best we can guess, the full dimension of all the different ways in which city staff reaches out to engages residents. So Shanika and I drafted a survey that we sent to all city staff. This is in your packet as well, the questions in the survey. One question we didn't ask that we forgot, my fault, by the way, is to ask what department they worked in, the people who answered the survey. And because it closed just yesterday, I think it was out for 10 days, we have results we can share with you, but we haven't been able to summarize it. But Shanika, are you still here? Where are you? Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Kind of. You're very faint.
Yeah, it's the laptop. How about now?
That's good.
Yeah, that's better.
That's good.
Okay. So yeah, we didn't have a chance to summarize everything in the document, but Jane was kind enough that we did receive from the Google Forms, and kind of give us a little synopsis of what those results were. So only about 38 city staff answered the questions, and just based off of how they answered them, we can tell a lot of them were coming from the public service domain, like outreach maybe, or general assistance, just based off of how they went about answering the questions. So I have a document. I would share it on here, but I don't want to confuse anyone, so I'm just going to read from my phone, so forgive me for looking down. But so as Jane mentioned, we did forget to ask about which department. However, what we did find is that over 70% of those who answered the question does engage a lot with the public. What else? We also figured, we also came up with the fact that about a large portion of them, like about 45% of them, have to, by ordinance and federal law, have to engage and follow certain guidance when it comes to public engagement. The 55 are not required.
So there, a lot of them are doing it because they have to.
Correct.
Either they're sending out notices for, hey, there's a zoning ordinance, a variation on a zoning, and you have to give notice to people who live within certain number of feet of a residence, kind of thing. So a lot of it was required.
Yeah. Of those 38 participants, we also saw, we had a scale, and as you guys can see on the question part of the packet, 1 to 5, 5 being the highest. A lot of the public engagement was in the middle. Like they feel like the satisfaction and the success rate of their public engagement is either average or, you know, moderate. It could have room for potential growth. Maybe it doesn't, but on both of those questions, it was a middle ground, like somewhere between a 3 or a 2 with their satisfaction when it comes to public engagement. So what that told me, oh, and then another part, sorry for jumping all over the place, but I want to hit like some of the major things we've seen. Another major part of it was the type of audience that our participants are dealing with, and it ranged from adults to seniors to low-income households to what else was on there? Homeless, and just different areas, not too much of the youth. I mean, there were questions on that which led us to believe that yes, there's some outreach teams who answered these surveys, but a lot has engaged around adults and homeless, and the I'm not sure what ward we didn't ask that question as well, but it was really interesting to see that a lot of them had commentaries about we can do better in our engagement and how we go about doing better in our public engagement from a staff perspective. But again, it all depends on what department you're in and what kind of work you're doing and how you're trying to get around. Some of it is maybe lack of resources or not having enough staff members to do the work, right? Everyone's feeling overwhelmed. How the city is reacting to the type of events or the type of things that we're doing to progress the city of Evanston. So while we weren't able to get all the details, this said a lot. And Jane, you can jump in at any point with your points. But
thanks, Shanika.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
It went to all the employees?
It did.
And you only got 38 back?
38.
Yep.
Kimberly, couldn't this go to the directors meeting and those directors take those to their staff? I don't understand why you would not have gotten hundreds of them back. I mean, the city employs over 700 people, right?
Right.
And that was my question. 38 staff. What is that?
So you have to. So I'm going to be honest with you. Yes, the city has over 700 employees, but probably less than 200 of those employees are administrative staff. A lot of them are working in public works who are not labor or public safety. So you have to take account for that. Also, you have to take, also, I think, looking at the result, I was sitting here thinking to myself, that's not a good number either. And I'm thinking maybe you have to go back out because my concern is I think there needs to be more intentionality why this is important to have them fill out. With us having a hybrid right now, where majority of our staff who are administrative staff working from home, I think there's that disconnect too. So if you want, we can go and extend the survey out and try to increase those numbers so that we can have a more representative response.
The reason why I'm saying this is because, and I understand the dispersion of the staff of the city very well. And even if we're talking about public works and we're talking about the who picks up recycling, those people have interaction with the public, just like anybody else does. No, but here's what I'm saying. That's why I'm asking, couldn't it go to you all's administrative meetings, to those directors, because they were the ones who need to make sure that their staff are getting these and filling them out. It's as simple as that. I wouldn't expect you to have gotten 700 of them back. I'm not saying that because maybe it's impossible. You have part-time workers and all of that, and I understand that piece. But there's a way in which you have to have people who are accountable for staff to make them accountable for this, because this is important. And they need to understand how their staffs are interact. If I'm calling if the recycling man leaves my cart in the alley, I'm picking up my phone and calling Dave Stone back. I mean, if I say something to him and I've asked him 2 or 3 times not to leave it in the alley, then my next call is to his boss. So I'm just simply saying the interaction is there, and we need to know how they feel about that. And if they, we have some people who don't need to be working with the public, and that is a public job just as sure as you're working at the library and stamping out a card for someone.
So the way that this questionnaire, the way that the survey was designed, it was not designed for all staff to complete. So I guess that's the problem, is that it was very tailored to those who are doing community type meetings or community type engagement at a more of a informal or forums or So I guess if the intention is for it to be broader engagement, then there needs to be retooling of the survey. But at the same time, I think we can still increase the numbers of participants. That if the number of 35 to you all feels a little bit inadequate, which it is, then we need to do it differently. So it may have to be more of a personal email to individuals to have them complete it more directly. So, I mean, there's different approaches to this. I think 10 days is not a lot of time when you're talking about the 4th of July in the middle of vacation time too, where people may not have been aware if they weren't getting their city emails or reviewing. So I think this is a good opportunity for us to do a different approach and come back with some additional responses.
Well, just if I could jump in, there were some major flaws in the survey itself, which I'm primarily responsible for having written. Like the first question didn't allow you to say, do you do public engagement? If no, then you don't have to bother with the rest of the survey, that kind of thing. So we might have gotten different responses if people could opt out having answered no to just the first question. And as Kimberly said, it's a tough time. It was a tough time when we put the survey out there, in addition to the fact that, what do we mean by public engagement now? So we're in this weird hybrid time of public engagement. It's hard to know. Were we talking about public engagement the way we used to do it before, middle of March, or public engagement the way we're doing it now? So
also, Jane, can I just, I think Dolores and I are probably thinking public engagement is anytime a City of Evanston employee talks to a member of the public. So that could be a member of the public talking to the forestry team saying, why are you taking the tree down? You know? So, I mean, and I know they get that question asked a lot. But
we tried to capture that in the survey, but it didn't capture all of the public engagement that the city
Right, and I think engagement, I mean, as we're talking about it here, engagement is sort of a formal process. And I think we want to make sure we also, with the survey, capture the informal process of public contact, So, I mean, I recognize, that's a whole, that's widening it considerably, but, for a lot of people, their their regular government contact is their, whoever picks up their garbage. They're standing, you know, they have a conversation, they know.
Yeah. We kind of tried to distinguish between the provision of services and the act of public engagement. So the provision of services being something different, that is a public facing, that is interacting with the public. But we were trying to get at all the ways in which the city is affirmatively going out to seek public input or provide public information as distinct from providing services. Yeah, Shanika.
And also, guys, I think this too, while the results may not have been a lot, as in 38 responses, however, this is a good place for us to start to really begin to think about, like you all stated, what is public engagement? What does that look like as we're transforming? And then Jane and I too, start to think about a lot of other things that we weren't thinking about prior to doing the survey. So I do feel like this is a good start. I don't want us to get discouraged by the low numbers of responses, but just take this and remodel it and to make it where it's more, I don't know, direct about what it is we're looking for and asking. But this is a good place for us to brainstorm and figure out how do we want to move with public engagement as a committee, as well, as a commission, as well as a city. So just wanted to build.
And can I also share that, you know, I at times struggled because I wondered, how is it that staff, some of the questions made some assumptions that I didn't know. Like there was a question about how does staff identify constituents most affected by the project? I was like, what are the parameters? What are the values? When they say they're successful, what does that mean, right? Because if there are not some set parameters or some set values, what I may think is successful, if it's not based on some, benchmark or milestone or value, my success may not be success for somebody else. So there was a lot here, I think, that needed some more parameters around them. And to me, it's just a reminder of we really need to get a public engagement policy so we can have parameters.
And do some training. Do some training in public engagement. So a couple of the things that jumped out to me in this is that the primary activities that the city does, at least on those who answered, is public information. Just pushing information out there, not the give and take, the back and forth of soliciting public feedback. And the other thing is to identify their target audiences. The city staff who responded to this primarily rely on people they already know. So existing engagement participants, sign-in lists, their own personal contact lists and surveys. Rather than looking further, the outreach again, Max, looking further to find people who would be affected by or interested in a policy or a proposal or a project or something. So it's the reliance on the people that you already know, but there was also recognition in this about lack of representation in the people who participate in their activities. So I'll send kind of my summary of the findings of this first and preliminary survey and what it means. But it's pretty clear that with more time, staff, and budget, the city staff who answered this felt that they could do a much better job in engaging Evanston residents and constituents. So
do you not want to expand the survey to add more feedback?
I mean, even having looked through the survey responses here, I already started drafting the next one. Fine-tuning, de-jargoning it, adding by the way, which department do you work in, changing how some of the questions work. I was thinking it would happen a year from now, not wanting to over-survey people.
So I hear that term a lot, over-survey people, and I think the reason people say that is because they don't see action behind the survey. If we're trying to build a better policy and incorporate our staff voices in that policy, we have to be able to get more feedback. And so the survey has to be retooled a little bit so that it's more inclusive to more different voices than those who are administrative staff. Then that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then we have to. I'm sorry.
What's not in the packet is a long preamble to the survey, kind of explaining This is what we mean by tools and methods. This is what we mean by activities. This is what we mean by public engagement distinct from services. So there was more content and
no one read that.
Context. Yeah, and it was long.
It was too long.
It requires a lot of explanation.
Yeah, and so maybe what could happen, I'm sorry.
No. I just would say, I mean, I would be interested if we did as Dolores suggested, and at least get the directors of the 200 administrative staff and said, answer this, so that, you know, we don't just get 38. I mean, I recognize the other 600 or so employees. They're public facing, but in lots of a wide variety of ways that aren't necessarily required by statute. But it is interesting to me to hear back here in this survey from what Shanika was just saying, is that they had sort of a middling view of how effective they were. So I would like to hear from more of the administrative staff in terms of, I mean, these are the people who are required by law to reach out to people. So what is it that they're experiencing, and what are their comments on ways that we can improve this, given our parameters of budget, time, and staff?
Yeah, they had a lot of good ideas. So we did ask that question: where is there opportunity for more meaningful public engagement, and what additional resources do you need? Yeah. And got a lot of great responses and ideas from them.
I think we should all see that. I think that would be very interesting.
Yeah, I will. As I said, it closed yesterday. So.
Well, that's okay.
We quick turnaround and
that doesn't mean anything. It's still closed. We can always reopen it. I mean,
yeah.
No one knows. Trust me around here. One other thing I can say, and I will definitely, and Shanika, you and I can work on some messaging to department heads, but you know, I think there's a common theme here, and something that I've been trying to figure out internally. We talk a lot about external, like equity regarding our communities and so forth, and we sometimes forget about the internal. And we have starved the beast of internal resources. We don't do travel. We can't train right now for, you know, anything significantly. And I understand we're in a very tight budget situation, but our culture here has been like most bureaucratic governments under these type of, you know, systems that we all know are racialized. And that is, you have to, you know, submit the document, fill out the form, post the meeting. There's no training on how to do community engagement. I mean, going to grad school in this profession to be a city manager, they never taught us how to do community engagement, and even to engage our own staff. I mean, you should see the response that we had at the city manager's review, which I know Doreen was at, conversation, and the emails that I got back from the community was, thank you, I was heard, because they're not used to staff, they're used to staff just talking and giving them information. They're not used to staff being quiet and just taking notes and just gathering the information that they're, so that's a whole different way culturally that we haven't been taught to do. And I know that's what a lot of staff members want from the anecdotal conversations I've had, but that takes training, which takes money. And that's something I'm working on, so that we can back this policy up with some adequate training, so staff can actually feel comfortable engaging populations that they don't know.
Well, let's make sure we hold on to those thoughts as we, I hope, end up building a public engagement policy for the city. But again, the reasoning behind the doing a survey is that it's hard to impose a policy on city staff without really understanding how they engage the public, what their constraints are, and what they hope for, how they feel they can do it better. So I think it was a useful exercise. So the next step would be then to let's tinker with some of the survey questions, and then figure out a way with you, Kimberly and Shanika, to send it back out and see if we can improve the response rate. And we will include the what department do you work in question. The survey was anonymized, which I think is just making sure staff know that they can answer candidly.
And I still want to continue to emphasize the department heads coming in, only because when we start to look at really looking at equity, we're going to be they are the first ones you're going to look at to see what's happening with equity within their departments. And I just think that they ought to be engaged from the very beginning in terms of making sure that their staffs are hearing this and seeing this and getting involved in it. And so that's why I'm suggesting that method, Jane, of getting the information out, not just an email sent to the staff person, but the staff person will know there's going to be some accountability back through their department heads, you know, by getting that back in. So that's just another way of doing it. Not only, that's just a suggestion.
Thank you, Dolores. So Kimberly and Shanika, I'll follow up with you this week. We could probably do this before our August meeting too, I'm thinking. All right. Great. Anything else on the survey? Anything else that you would want asked in the survey? If you think of anything, send it our way in the next week so we can turn it around. Next on the agenda, communications.
Jane, real quick, just add
Alejandra
to that subcommittee of you, Kimberly and Shanika.
Make it a subcommittee.
No, I mean, if you want our engagement and some input, or it's going to be done informally.
Okay, great, thank you. Anything else on that? Communications? Any communications, Kimberly?
So I am working on finalizing a actual equity plan, work plan moving forward for our internal staff. What the hope would be at the next Equity Empowerment Commission, I will be able to share with you that plan so that you all will be aware of how this is going to travel with you all. This is going to take some time to get us grounded because there are going to be a lot of work that has to be done internally with how our staff is currently structured. So something that I will inform you about is that we need to create an internal equity and empowerment commission. I will not call them equity and empowerment commission, but reviewing the equity empowerment commission's ordinance. I realized that ordinance was really structured. If I read the way I read it, a lot of that ask of you all were really things that should have been asked of us internally as staff to be thinking about and working on, and that hadn't happened. We relied, and we continue to do this, we rely on a staff person and say, okay, we have a person who's dealing with equity. We no longer have to do the work. We just have to, you know, get there okay. And then if they tell us everything's okay, then we're doing equity. And that's not fair to anyone. That's not fair to any staff. And so we are looking to form a real equity committee internally that will be kind of a 2-year cohort commitment by staff to do not just training, but also to begin the process of learning how to incorporate equity in their work, and also training our department heads. Because here's the thing, Ms. Holmes, you know, our department heads, if you look at all that's who's in those roles, don't know really what equity is defined as. They don't understand what racism means, and not the personal individual racism. I'm just talking about structural. So how can I hold them accountable to something that they are not even aware of? So we have to get our department heads ready and accountable to be aware. I think accountability needs to start at the top. I agree, but we also need to provide them with the tools. And so that is something that I'm truly ready to move forward with, because I'm tired of talking about it. And our department heads, just listening to the conversations that we've had, without getting into any detail, because I did not ask them, you know, it was not so I would share. I'm sitting there frustrated because I recognize that they don't even see some of their privilege in the words they're used or the things that they say. And how am I expecting them to understand equity if they don't even recognize that equity has nothing to do with diversity? You know, because you have a certain number of employees in your department, that doesn't mean that you're doing practices equitable. You know, because you are doing things that you may, you know, use the word equity doesn't mean you're actually thinking through things equity. What's equitable is we have a situation right now where we've been talking through how to deal with undocumented residents and how we are funding our programs for GA. How you think about equity is, okay, we recognize that there's a population that has a barrier, which is they don't have citizenship. And we recognize the systems that we have require them to have citizenship. So how do we eliminate a barrier that can then allow everyone to have the same access, but now you're allowing those barriers not to be there for anyone who may be a citizen? That's thinking about things through an equity lens. It's not about, you know, who's serving the Fifth Ward only, you know? And so, you know, I want you all to know, I understand where you, I know Tim left, where Tim is coming from. I recognize that this, you know, we're working this way through, but I'm still trying to figure out where best you all fit in this conversation and how do you hold us as the city accountable, because we need to have an accountability partner, and it's not going to be the city council, because unfortunately the city council too haven't done the work yet to recognize equity. So I really need this group we need to figure out a way to have this group hold us as staff, as an organization accountable to ensure the work that we're moving forward with really is truly dealing with systemic issues within our organization, internally and externally. And so I would ask for you all to consider for us to do a retreat about this commission, because what I would like to do is have you all have this conversation. I know many of you have had these conversations several times and probably tired of having these conversations. But in order for us to all be using the same language, we have new members and we'll have a new member coming on. That'll be important. We need to revisit the ordinance that is your foundation of work, because reviewing that ordinance, I'm just sitting there just like, what does this mean? I don't understand. So I just share that. So I've been working, I've shared this with both chairs, Jane and Alejandra, so they both know that, you know, this is something that has been bothering me a little bit, trying to figure out how best to situate you all so moving forward, you really have a place in that you're just not the go-to whenever there's a race issue. So I just want you to be aware of that. And I thank you for the patience in the last 6 months. I know, like with the, you know, with the departure of Pat, you know, that really kind of put a lot of things on hold, and, you know, and then COVID happened and other things start happening. And so I just want you to know that, yes, I have a lot of things on my plate, but this is the #1 priority on my plate. And there's other staff that can handle COVID. I just want to make sure that we're doing a job and really putting words behind equity and not just using it as a buzzword. So that's my minute of ranting, and apologies, I've been here since 7 o'clock this morning, so I may be a little testy right now. It's time for me to go to bed. So
no,
anyway.
Bring all the testy. I appreciated hearing that.
With that being said, we have the reparations subcommittee will be meeting again on the 24th, I believe, of July, and you all have in your packet Dino's excerpt. I just want to say it wasn't just Dino that put this together. We also had Jenny from the Evanston Evanston History Center. I asked the two of them, along with Peter Gavin, Larry Gavin, to we had asked them to come sit and staff them, which include our law department, and our Sarah Flax from our community development, as well as Melissa Klotz, who's a part of our zoning division. We all met with them and said, we need to figure out how do we start talking about evidence. We have a lot of conversations, but we don't have documentation. So over the last month, we have been coming together and having these meetings and working collaboratively with the city as well as with these other institutions to come to be able to put this document together. And so I just want to acknowledge those individuals as well, because it's going to require a lot of people involved, and they really have done an almost job. The actual document right now is over 40 some pages. So just imagine when we get to a final draft, it's going to be a really good, rich document that we will want to probably publish as something that will be our guiding principle and sharing. And I'm also looking at that as a great curriculum for our staff, as you need to learn the history so you understand why things are the way they are, because we can't make change if you don't know your history, right? That's what I always was told as a kid. So that document is going to be used beyond just reparations. I want to incorporate that into our city operations.
Yes.
And to add a little bit to that, Alderwoman Ruth Simmons has begun conversations with the Metropolitan Planning Council, which published 2 years ago now, a report called The Cost of Segregation, mostly Chicago-based. And she has made inquiries with MPC, Metropolitan Planning Council, to ask if there's possibility of commissioning a cost of segregation study for Evanston. So there are two ways of looking at this. One would be the cost of segregation to our Black community in Evanston, for our historic Black community in Evanston. The other would be the cost of segregation in Evanston to the community as a whole, and how much it has cost us over the years to have segregated housing and discriminatory city policies and programs. And so she started that conversation. I'm part of it because I know the folks at MPC, and we're looking to see if there's some funding that could be rustled up to help do this. So that would be another way of making the case, in addition to all the historical work that Dino and what's her name again? I don't know, the one from the Evanston History Center have done, but another way of building the case, make the business case essentially for reparations, kind of the data to show. So a lot of good stuff happening. I'll let you know if I learn any more on that front too. I loved reading Dino's and what's her name again? Jenny.
Jennifer.
Jenny.
Yeah, Jenny.
Jenny, okay. Sorry.
They have a lot of our documents, so thank goodness, because I
yeah.
can't find anything here. So
okay, great. So thank you, Kimberly.
Yeah, thank you for that.
For all you're doing, and for carrying us through these last 6 months, through COVID, through everything else. We don't really have a report from the Evanston Truths Working Group. I don't think we've met. We'll keep it on the agenda, and maybe between now and our next meeting. We've got a lot going on. Anything else? Let's finish strong.
Let me just say that
yes,
I don't
please.
know if I have not reached out to Eileen, because she was our community partner from the YWCA that was going to release that subcommittee, the Truth Subcommittee. So I'll reach out to her because we haven't met.
Okay. And then, thank you, Alejandra. And then the last thing, just to skip backwards just a little, is Kimberly mentioned a retreat, maybe over the next month before our next meeting. Alejandra and Kimberly and I can figure out a way to give form and shape to a retreat, but what we would want the operative question to be, and how could we facilitate it virtually, if that was what we wanted to do. Aiming for sometime this fall, right, Kimberly? Yeah, okay. So more later at the next meeting. Anything else? Commissioners?
Tim, are you still staying on?
Well, I'm trying to think through whether it makes sense for me to plan to just pop in next month if there is one final vote. I think I will.
You need to have your vote on this.
I want to see this thing through. So if we had been done tonight would have been my last. But I think since we've got one more action, I may even, if you could put it at the front of the agenda, I may come in, vote, and excuse myself. Yeah, I'll be here next month.
And maybe we'll just keep on delaying it so you can keep coming back.
That's what's going on here.
I'll second that.
I tried, Tim. I tried.
I know you did, and I appreciate it. I'm the one who slowed things up with with bringing the edits. So
I wish there was a way of bringing cookies to a meeting or some refreshments to celebrate. And thank you for 3 years of service, Tim.
yeah, it's
Truly.
been an honor, and we'll check in next month. I'll
Okay.
be here. I'll be here on the 20th.
All right, great.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah. All right, anything else? I figured out to get a light at my desk so I wasn't totally in darkness by the end of our meeting, like last one. Anything else?
Oh, we need to tell Kimberly and Carla that we don't usually go over this long. I'm looking at the clock. I can't believe
Oh,
it's 5
goodness,
minutes to 9 already. We don't usually meet this long. So,
Thank you for your patience. Thank you, thank you. Glad to have you, Carla and Kimberly.
yeah, welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you for your contribution.
And now that we've seen you, I hope to see you in person, masked, of course, around town. So thank you so much. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So move.
Second.
A second? We are adjourned. Thank you all very much. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Kimberly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly and Shanika.
Yep, Shanika, oh, she gone.
Okay.
Kimberly, could you stay on for just a minute?
Yeah, sure. Let me go ahead and let me end the meeting recording.
Okay.